All right, let's move on to our last segment, which is also a new segment and
Yeah.
something we're testing, and we'll see if we have a larger audience now that we switch up our.
Yeah. Go from 10 to 13 maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe
Yeah.
some non-family members.
All right, so that last segment is about comparing Korean drama and Korean movies versus like reality to for someone who doesn't live in Korea, and sometimes maybe Korean movies are getting more and more popular, and
Yeah.
Korean drama also with like Squid Games and these kind of things like getting popular abroad, and like people might wonder, is that really how things work in Korea? And
Yeah.
it's the
Every
same for
year you can win $1 million going to the Squid Game.
yeah. No, but not on
Uh, yeah.
European also. When we watch like American dramas and
Yeah.
sitcom, like Friends is like big reference in
Yeah.
Europe, and it's like, huh, it's like, do they really like you wonder what part of the
A
culture
chef
is.
and a waitress can really afford an apartment that big in New York City.
Yeah. Alright, so I that was my turn to select the first clip. I had a clip that is gonna like stir some controversy because it's a clip from actually not a Korean drama, but it's like the Canadian Kenneth is from
Yeah,
Canada, right?
Canada.
Canadian drama, Kim's Convenience. And I chose that clip because originally I want to choose clip from like actual Korean drama and movies, but for first segment and for like the first of this new segment, I wanted it to be a subject that is a little bit. It's a big subject actually.
Yeah.
It's about overreaction in Korean drama, like in
Yeah.
movies. Like the first thing that you might notice when you watch a Korean drama is like, oh my god, like they are overacting, and
Yeah.
it's like it's too much. Like they're yelling too much, they're crying too loud, they're laughing too loud, they're always constantly overreacting. So there's this scene from Kim's Convenience, where it really shows like the cultural shock between this Canadian family who are like actually Koreans but live in Canada for a long time, and there's this one cousin that comes from Korea and visit them, and she's like super like happy all the time, and she's like excited about everything. And the thing that we don't agree on that scene is she's not really uh
Representative
re-
of like a Korean person.
right. She's like dressed as more like people dressing like this would be more associated to like Japanese cute girls or
It's like the literal Japanese har har I just forgot
or
Harajuku subculture, like really flamboyant, tons of accessories, colored hair. It's a
Harajuku. I think it's a region in Tokyo, but
no, that's what it is. It's that neighborhood. That's they call
yeah,
like the Harajuku girls because they go there and that's how they dress, and like it's a little weird that
maybe, yeah.
that's the stereotype they picked because it's I don't think I've ever seen anyone in
So anyway,
Korea.
this show is not really good at like really showing the Korean culture, because actually the author of the show were not Koreans, or I
No,
think there was like they were Koreans like in the first few
it's
seasons.
based on a book that
Yeah,
is written by a Korean Canadian,
yeah.
but the writers on the show are not Korean.
Right.
So
I
it's like
think
the
some
source
of
material.
some of them were at the beginning, and then
Maybe,
they had a
yeah.
fight, and like the latest seasons, I think there were
Yeah.
no Koreans writer anymore. So it's not a
Yeah.
really good representation. But anyway, that scene I thought was funny, and it was hard to pick one scene to show
Yeah.
like that, like over
Yeah.
the top like reactions for
Yeah.
everything.
Her dress and stuff isn't Korean, but it's like the overreaction piece is what we're talking about.
Let's
Sure.
watch a few seconds of that clip and see if we get strike on YouTube or not for the first time. All right. So that's like the current family, like
Yeah.
the daughter and the parents, and that's the cousin. Like, okay, so we don't agree on the dress, and
Yeah.
but like yeah, the
Yeah,
way
like
like she's like
reacting really big.
reacting,
And
big
the
reaction.
Canadian family's kind of confused about
Yeah.
the reaction. Yeah.
I give you one too.
Yeah, I think it's like the hit that kind of hitting. You'd see that in dramas a lot. They'll like
Yeah.
kind of overreact and like hit on the arm.
You is
So yeah, that girl, she's super excited about that little toy she
Yeah.
brought, and like you can see the dad being like, okay, well, it's
Ye-
cool, yeah, and she's
Yeah.
like, oh, it's so
I think that
funny.
is accurate because you have that. I guess to kick it off, I think aspects of that are accurate because I think sometimes when I'm hanging out with like Korean friends, my wife's friends, my wife, just other Korean friends, there is kind of that like, oh, it's so cute, kind of like that really big reaction
Yeah.
to things that are like okay, or like something that tastes pretty good, but it's like, oh my gosh, it's so delicious. Like that does
And
happen.
it's so cute, like so cute, I'm gonna die. They say that in Korean. It's
Yeah.
so cute. This dog is so all the dog that you meet, like when you're walking
Yeah.
with your wife or friends, is like
Yeah.
is the cutest dog ever. You know,
Yeah.
like each dog is the cutest dog ever they've ever
Yeah.
seen. And like every food they eat, like every restaurant they go, it's the best restaurant they've ever been to. And yeah, I think there's definitely some truth to that segment where, but which is kind of cool, you know, like they don't, and you can see that in that clip also, that's why I like that clip too, is that you see the Canadian family, they're like, oh my gosh, she's weird. But here, like, there's no judgment like this.
Yeah. You're not
it's
reserved.
yeah,
Like,
it's like it's okay to have an outgoing personality and have a like a different personality.
Yeah.
That's okay. Where like in maybe Western countries, it's more like everybody should be kind of the same.
Yeah.
And like there's this flat
Yeah.
personality where
no, I agree. Like one of my, especially like there's a younger, like not teenage, like mid-20s cousin in my wife's family who's like kind of, I would say kind of like typical Korean girl in her 20s. She has really big reactions to everything. But yeah, it is kind of refreshing because like even by herself, like I'll do something because I'm like the foreigner in the family. It's like, oh, that was so cool. Oh, that's great. And she, like my wife will do something and she's like, oh, that's so cool. And like it's yeah, it's kind of refreshing that someone doesn't mind just putting a ton of emotion on their sleeve
You're
and
right.
wearing it. Yeah.
yeah, they're not afraid to show their emotion, whether it's bad or good.
Yeah.
But we can debate whether it's actually a good thing or a bad thing. Sometimes it's really feels really rewarding when you actually
Yeah.
make a gift to your in-laws or your wife or your
Yeah.
friend, and they're like they have such that big reaction and they're so thankful, and it's like it's heartwarming, and it's like, oh
Yeah.
it's,
Especially I brought back like a nice bottle of scotch or something from the US and it's like they kind of freak out over it. They bring it out. They want to all try it right away. Yeah, like they really make a big show of like
pictures,
how
like,
cool
tell
it is.
their
Like they put it
friends.
right on the mantle.
Yeah.
And yeah, it feels good because sometimes in the US, you know, you think through a present, you give it to like a family member in the West, and like it might just be like, oh, thank you, and they just like put it in a cabinet, and you're like, oh, okay, like it's just like you kind of just oh, okay, they liked it, I guess. Like
it feels really good. But then at the same time, you have this sometimes the syndrome of, oh my God, you speak Korean so well when you just say hi.
yeah,
And like it sounds so fake after a while. And I get like annoyed now if people say, if I just like say hi, you know, in Korean, and they're like, oh my God, you speak Korean so well. I say, well, not at all.
I used to think it was felt so good when I first came to Korea. And it's like, but I don't speak Korean very good. And I know that now. Like, I definitely don't. And yeah, it doesn't feel great when like a shopkeeper's like, oh my God, it's so good. It's like, okay, we both know I'm not. we both know that's not true.
Yeah. But yeah, and there's like good reactions and also bad reaction, like
True.
overreaction for bad things, or like there's this how can I say, like
the pigeon
the
example.
pigeon legend,
Yeah.
where like pigeons are like super like evil or
Yeah, dirty. I think it's because like they
dirty.
carry disease and stuff.
Yeah, but like women freak out.
Yeah, you'll
from
get
this
like
too.
especially like young groups of young teenage girls like all hanging out and like a pigeon flies in and they scream.
They would scream and hide behind
The
stuff.
funny thing is that like I was thinking about this and I feel like it's not that different from an individual to group mentality to things in the West. Like I think about like groups of guys in the West, like America. Might be totally normal, chill guy to talk to one-on-one. And they get with their group of other broy guys and like the douchiness is exponential. It's like one douchey guy by himself might be pretty normal. 4 douchey guys together at the bar are just like douche cubed.
Just cute.
But that is, and so it's like, okay, that happens in the US, like that's that. But then I think we are not used to things like reacting to cuteness or deliciousness being like cubed, where it's like almost all emotions, being afraid of something is cubed, like when you have 4 people together here. So it is interesting. It's not, I think, unique, maybe just the range of emotions that are like, you get this kind of like
The range and the
compound.
intensity of
Yeah.
the emotions are just different.
But the dramas, though, it is true in real life. Like, and some things I think it's just, I don't know. There's one example I think that it's hard to say like it's fake or things, which is Korean funerals.
Yeah.
So if someone's ever been to a Korean funeral, it is like people are wailing, like screaming, like yelling, like crying, but it's like
That's the case in other cultures too, to be honest. It's not
Really?
only Korea, but
yeah, the US is like it's very quiet, very somber.
But I've seen in other cultures where like it's like a good thing to like cry out loud and like show your emotions.
But that's just, to me, that's like the rawest thing where it's like, okay, this isn't just everyone putting on an act. It's like people actually crying and like yelling, like they are actually putting emotion out there. I wonder, is like it's in some cases maybe healthier to like in America we repress it, like repress your emotion,
Yeah.
don't show your emotion.
But it's when you watch any like Korean drama scenes when there's like a funeral involved, it's like it gets to you. I mean, some parts it's a little bit too much, but also it's like, oh my god, like it really gets to you, and like you realize like how sad the scene is. And yeah, I think that's totally like any funeral scene in Korean drama that's not like overreacted, or that's truly the way it is. And
Yeah, no, I think so. The funerals I've been to 2, and I was kind of surprised. Like it was kind of, I felt weird because like I felt awkward as like I'm so used to American funerals where it's like an obligation to go, and like I felt like uncomfortable, but then I felt uncomfortable about being uncomfortable. Like why should I feel uncomfortable? Like their grandma died, they should be upset. Like yeah,
they are upset. I think sad and upset.
yeah,
Yeah, and yeah, generally I would say that yes, Korean drama are, sometimes it's overacted and like the acting is not that
Yeah.
good, like in any soap opera
Yeah.
in other countries also. But there are also a lot of truth behind it, and
yeah,
anytime you see a scene where they're crying super loud or they're fighting really loudly, like two older people like fighting on the street and like yelling at each other,
that is
like,
accurate.
that is
You see
accurate.
that,
Like,
you do see that, yeah.
sometimes, yeah.
But it is true too. It's funny, like I feel like volume. Again, maybe it's repression in like America, where like you just don't get loud in public. It's like not a thing.
Yeah.
It's like you shouldn't do it. And like you'll have like a street vendor. It's not always like an argument that's gonna go to blows. You might have like two street vendors or like in a street market, people arguing, two old guys yelling at each other. They're not gonna like fight. Like people don't think it's like in America, if that were happening, people would like call the police. Like, oh my god, two people are about to fight each other. And it's like, no, that's just like. And again, I'm wondering like on a bigger scale, do you have more people like murdering each other in America because they repress it and they like just bottle it up and then they explode? Where here it's like you yell at someone in the street and then you keep going. I'm just curious, like if maybe it's better to yell a little bit a lot than don't yell ever, and then like murder someone and kill yourself like they do in America.
Overall, I would say that I like that culture better.
Yeah.
It's rewarding when people are showing emotions to you,
Yeah.
and I don't know how to do it. Like, I'm terrible at this.
I can't.
And even though I've been here for almost 10 years, I would like sometimes to show a little bit more, to my wife or my family
Yeah.
when they offer me something, a gift. I want to show them that I'm truly grateful for it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'm actually truly grateful,
Yeah.
but I was not raised like this, so it's a
I
little bit hard
agree.
to change
I
that.
think something we both have talked about too, though, is that there are times also where it doesn't feel good, which is like when you do something kind of like you mess something up, like you're cooking for your family, like the in-laws, and you like mess up what you're cooking, and you just know it's like not that good,
Yeah, but they know how to make you
and
feel
they
better
react to
also.
it, and they like overreact that it's so good, and it's like I look at them like we both know this isn't that good. Like let's stop pretending.
Yeah, but they're trying to make you feel better.
I
Which
know
is
it comes from a
fundamentally-
nice place. It comes from a nice place. Definitely. Yeah, I think overall it's definitely something to get used to, the different displays of emotion. And
Clearly, the first few months I was in Korea, I was really, when I could not, speak Korean or understand Korean, the word that you hear very often when you hear like two Koreans talking to each other is like the 진짜. It's like with really, and they're
Yeah.
like, oh 진짜, 진짜.
Yeah,
they're,
yeah.
they're talking like this, and that's like almost one of the first word you learn in Korean, because they're saying it all the time. And it's
Yeah.
like everything, when you look at someone like talking to each other, even if you don't understand, you're like, oh my god, that looks like such an epic conversation.
know.
Like, oh really?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
But that's truly the way it is. And
I
it's-
always joke with my wife that her and her best friend, like we hang out we hang out a lot. Like for the last 8 years, 9 years I met my wife, we would have food together, and I always joke that whenever they get together, their conversation comes down to just an exchange of like 3 words. 맛있다, 너무 맛있다, oh 너무 맛있다, which is it's delicious, it's so delicious, it's too delicious. It's just they go back and
super
forth,
duper
go back and forth, too delicious, and like it's funny.
There's not a word for it.
Yeah, it's just funny. But again, like it's nice. Like they're genuinely having just a great time eating the food, enjoying it. Like it's like I think about sometimes like in America, I'll go with friends like, oh, this is pretty good. Yeah, it's fine. Like You just kind of sit there, but they're like freaking out over the food they're having, which is like, that's great. They're having such a great time together. Like, more power to them. Like, I'm jealous that they're able to just have so much fun just eating a macaroon together.
Anyway, to wrap up this segment, I think like the scene we saw today, I think it's funny to see like the difference between the two cultures,
Yeah.
and it really shows that thing that
Yeah.
I think Koreans would go abroad and they would like be so bright and so like
Yeah.
always like cheerful and like liking everything about it, and like Westerner being like more cold and like close to like
I agree.
suppress their emotions.
And one last bonus comment, actually, I think it's worth noting is that it is definitely something that's like recognized in the culture. Because if you watch variety shows here, they make a point. Variety shows are like, unscripted. It's just celebrities doing stuff. But they make a point of like zooming in on different people's faces and replaying a scene, showing different reactions.
I hate that.
Yes, it is very so. It's very hard to get used to as a foreigner. But my point is that like the producers of those shows know, like, reacting to things is part of like Korean culture. Like, Koreans want to see how other people react to things. It's actually like cut to show you each person's reaction, which is in the US seems such a weird thing to replay a scene.
Yeah.
Showing each person's face and how they're reacting. It's like so bizarre.
Well, what Daniel is referring to is like in those TV show, then they would like get cut to everybody in the audience, or like
Each panelist of each show,
each participant of the show. When something happens, there's a reaction, and they cut to each participant and they replay their reaction individually to see that person's reaction at that moment. Because if you see all of them,
you don't notice.
You don't notice the specific.
And so
reaction.
you get very used to, as a foreigner, like, it's very jarring at first watching a show and hearing the same 5 seconds of audio.
So there's a scene
looped.
So there's
looped.
there's a glass that breaks somewhere, and then you'll see that glass breaking 5 times, and you see like 5 different
You
reactions.
hear it 5 times and see 5 people's faces reacting to it breaking. But it's just interesting that that's like, you wouldn't just reaction itself. I bet there's a whole school of like, you could study anthropologically on like social anthropology on like why reaction is such an important thing in Korean culture, because it is like, follow the money. Like, if you're putting money behind these shows and such a big part of the show is showing reactions, that's clearly important to the viewers. Yeah, but it's that was a good one. I think that's one of the first things people notice, especially if they watch Korean shows, is like, oh, this seems a bit different than Western shows. So it's a good one to talk about.